Welcome to Thriving in Midlife. First thing, make sure you follow and review this podcast right now, as this helps me so much and I appreciate your support. Also, if you find this episode or any other one valuable, I invite you to share it with a friend or a family member. So, I am your host, Erin Esser, and this is the official podcast for women in peri. I've lost 60 pounds, gained energy and my life back by incorporating everything that I bring to you here on this podcast. I've been a nutrition and fitness coach for almost 15 years, and I help women just like you who have tried everything, have almost given up on themselves, and who think that there's no hope in losing weight, especially after 40. You want to feel great, and you desire to feel better in your body. And I help you do just that. I have a foundational program called Jumpstart, where I teach you how to fix your metabolism and regulate your hormones so that you can lose weight. But this is not a typical weight loss program. This is a lifestyle. And I equip you with the truth around foods, your hormones, your movement, and more, so that you can be empowered for the rest of your life to stay healthy and to feel great. So my next class is starting August 5th. I only have 2 spots left, so if this is something that you want to do, check out my page today at www.erinesser.com. That is Erin, ERINESSER.com, to read and learn about it. Okay, so on to today's episode. I have been doing a series around myths. The myths around nutrition, food, midlife, etc. I've done 2 other episodes before this. If you haven't seen them or listened to them yet, check them out. It's the myth around eating frequent small meals a day. And I have another one around and certain foods that have been deemed healthy that are actually harmful to our health. So check those out. And today we're going to be talking about the myth of low-fat diets, specifically to lose weight and for heart health. So we're also going to be touching on why saturated fat, that's been demonized for the last 100 years, especially over the last, I would say, 60 to 80 years. But why saturated fat is actually good for you and why you were told that it wasn't. So, heart disease in the beginning of the 20th century was an uncommon cause of death in the US. It was very rare for a doctor to have a patient walk in and to be able to diagnose them with heart disease. In present day, I'm recording this in July of 2024, it is the number 1 cause of death, especially in women. So in this podcast, we're going to see if we can uncover the real reasons, and we're going to explore why this long-standing belief that low fat, lots of grains, vegetables, fruits isn't as accurate as we've been led to think. So the idea that low-fat diets are heart healthy and great for weight loss dates back to the 90s. It actually goes back further than that with the installation of the ADA, the American Dietetics Association, and we're going to touch on that a little later. So make sure you stay tuned because that's towards the end of this show where I'm going to talk about how everything started. But we're going to talk now, like these last half century. And there was a prominent researcher by the name of Ancel Keys. Ancel Keys was his name, and he played a crucial role in shaping our understanding of dietary fat. His influential studies linked saturated fats to heart disease. So really understand that. So the studies that he did linked saturated fat, right? They've been demonized, go low on saturated fat. They cause heart disease. But here's the thing. It came out later that his studies were largely based on data that categorized saturated fat from foods like cakes, fried foods, fried items, and pastries. So that would be similar to you eating a Snickers bar, going and getting some fried mozzarella sticks, and then saying, oh, yeah, fat causes, and then having heart disease because this is like a diet that you've been living on. And then all of a sudden, oh yeah, fat causes heart disease. So already there's holes in those studies. So since then though, his research has been very criticized for its flaws and very selective reporting. And he's actually there's been claims of scientific misconduct. However, despite this, his recommendations shaped dietary guidelines for the coming decades. It's really hard to unlearn the things that you think you know. It's really hard to unlearn what you already have been taught. That's probably one of the biggest things when I'm doing this myth series for you to realize when you're listening. These things that I do and teach on are going to challenge everything that you know or that you think you know, because it's just what you've been taught. It's really hard to unlearn what we've been taught. So because of that, even his research has been criticized, it's still shaped the way we look at saturated fat. So it really wasn't until the 1970s, though, that these recommendations took hold. And if you listened to my podcast on eating small, frequent meals throughout the day, you'll understand how the political and big food influences have shaped our beliefs around, food and what we eat as well too. So basically in the 1970s, largely due to political and big food influences, the McGovern Committee, the Senate Select Committee on Nutrition and Human Needs, they released the first set of dietary guidelines for Americans. Now, these guidelines recommended a reduction in fat intake and an increase in carbohydrate consumption. But the recommendations, just like with Ancel Keys, were based on limited and flawed evidence, but they quickly became the foundation for national dietary policy. What many people don't know is that these guidelines were heavily influenced by the interests of the food industry. The committee was under significant pressure from agricultural lobbies and large food companies that stood to benefit from the promotion of carbohydrate-rich foods like grains and processed products. So this political influence overshadowed the scientific debates. And what this did was lead to a widespread adoption of the low-fat, high-carb diet model. Now, this was 1977. We had these guidelines really go into place around 1980. And you can see by the late 80s, in the 90s, the most popular diet trend was low fat. Everything low fat, low fat, low fat. Slim Fast, Weight Watchers was big in that time as well too. I mean, I think they've been around for a long time, but they were really big then. And it was all about low fat. So let's look at a few statistics over the years just to put things in perspective. So in the beginning of the 1900s, heart disease, like I said earlier, was incredibly rare. And so were obesity and type 2 diabetes. But by the time we got into the 50s, 60s, 70s, because of the implementation of the ADA in 1917, which we're going to go into later, but there was a rise in heart disease, obesity, and not as much type 2 diabetes yet, but obesity rates began to rise significantly. And by the 1970s, the obesity rate was around like 15% of people or so were considered obese. It's around 40% right now. If you think about over time, if you just look at the statistics from let's say 1900 until now, and then you start to pair up, what were our eating trends? What was being pushed? What was being encouraged to eat? What was being discouraged to eat? We'll start to see that we'll see patterns in there. So in present time, in present day, obesity rates are over 42%, where it was just 15% in the 70s. Type 2 diabetes has become a major health crisis, and heart disease remains the leading cause of death, especially in women. And these statistics show a trend that coincides with the adoption of the low-fat dietary guidelines. So the one thing that we need to talk about is that not all fats are created equal. And the type of fat that we consume matters more than the amount. So healthy fats like butter. Yes, I said butter. Fatty red meat, tallow, some avocados, maybe a little bit of olive oil as well too, maybe avocado oil, but mostly animal fats. They have been shown to have beneficial effects on heart health. These fats lower overall inflammation in the body, which is, you lower your inflammation, you won't have joint pain, you won't have anxiety, you won't have weight gain, you won't have type 2 diabetes, you won't have any of the issues that plague so many of us. Migraines, anything that promotes a sense of dis-ease in your body. So we have to take a look at when we're talking about fats, there's different kinds, right? I just mentioned healthy animal fats. But on the other hand, there's trans fats, which are like omega-6 fatty acids. You're going to find these in your fried foods, those fried mozzarella sticks, those fried pickles, the chicken strips that you like to get that are breaded and fried, the seed oils, the vegetable oils, the canola oil, all of those things. If you're getting your butter in a tub at the store, that's not actually real butter. Look at the ingredients. If it doesn't just say cream or cream and salt, it depends if you get unsalted or salted, put it back on the shelf. And if you have it in your refrigerator, throw it away. The tubs that are like Land O'Lakes, it's the margarine, and they have really great marketing. This is the thing. It's about the marketing. Throw it in the garbage because this is what's ruining your health. This is one of the things that's ruining your health. And we have to be able to distinguish between these different types of fats rather than lumping all fats into the same category. There's even a difference between plant fats, say coconut oil, avocado oil, olive oil, versus your animal tallow, your lard. Our hormones react differently based on the source of fats. We are an animal. We need animal fats. We are an animal. We need animal fats. So now let's transition into weight loss. So the low-fat diet myth suggests that by cutting out fat, we can easily lose weight, right? So how many of you have tried this? I know I've tried it throughout my years. It's been a long time since I've done low fat. However, this approach often backfires. And when it backfires big. Because what happens is when you reduce fat intake, we have to replace those calories with something else, right? So oftentimes we replace those calories with carbohydrates, oftentimes refined carbohydrates, packaged foods, and it's just sugar. So these carbs, especially if you're eating fruit all day long every day, if you're eating smoothie bowls, if you're waking up in the morning and having a juice, even if it's from like clean juice or, your favorite juice bar, I guarantee you this is leading to spikes in blood sugar and insulin levels, which promote fat storage rather than fat loss. So I know that's very controversial. I used to do this. I used to think, oh, this is the healthiest thing. I'm going to get all this fruit and I'm going to juice and I'm going to go on a juice fast. I'm going to do juice in the morning and really be eating a quote unquote clean diet. That's not a clean diet. That's a diet actually that spikes your blood sugar and your insulin levels. And guess what happens when that happens? Your cortisol levels go up. So you might be wondering now though, if you've done a juice fast or done anything like that, but I lost weight. I felt better when I did juice. Here's the thing to recognize. Anytime you change your diet and you cut out processed foods, you're going to feel better for a while, but it's not long lasting and it's not going to support your body long term. So there was a study by the Journal of the American Medical Associations, the AMA, and they found that participants on a low carb diet lost more weight and they actually had better improvements in cardiovascular risk factors compared to those on a low fat diet. So here's my question. Why aren't we told those studies? When we go to our doctor and we tell them, I'm on a high fat, low carb diet, most doctors, unless they know better, will say, ooh, careful on that. That's going to raise your cholesterol, therefore lead you to increased heart disease risk. And you should really incorporate some high fiber foods because that's going to be better for you. However, why aren't we told that there's a ton of research out there that actually proves you're going to get conflicting information if you go and have a nutrition chat with your doctor? They don't know nutrition. And if they do know nutrition, or if they think they know nutrition, it's the nutrition that they're getting that is based on these recommendations that we already just talked about by George McGovern and by Ancel Keys and the faulty research. And wait till we talk about how the ADA was actually created. Your jaw's going to drop to the floor. Guarantee it. So high fat satiates and decreases our cravings and actually improves our moods. There are psychiatrists, and I'm going to actually be doing a program studying this. My background is psychology, and I love the fact that food affects our mental state. So there's been so much research on this where literally within days, people who have been diagnosed with bipolar, with schizophrenia, with depression, anxiety, within days, changing to a high fat diet and low carb, moderate protein, actually they start to see improvements in their moods and their symptoms. It starts to go away. So high fat satiates. If you find yourself having cravings throughout the day, you're not eating enough fat. I talk to so many women and they're like, oh my gosh, I have this craving for, chips, or craving for sugars, craving for whatever it is. I'm hungry all the time. Eat more fat, eat more animal fat. Don't be afraid of the butter. Just make sure it's real butter. Okay. So one of the most significant pieces of evidence, though, debunking the low fat myth, comes from this research. It turns out that the sugar industry played a role in promoting the idea that fat was the enemy. In the 1960s, the sugar industry funded research that downplayed the risks of sugar and shifted the blame to fat. So I'm going to pause here for a second. So in the 1960s, 60 years ago, the sugar industry, yes, there is a sugar industry. They funded research that downplayed the risks of sugar and then shifted the blame to fat. Whenever you're looking at any research, this is one of the first things I do when I look at studies and research. Who funded that research? Most of the time, what you're going to find is big food industries. They're funding the research. Big pharma funding the research. It's the companies and it's the organizations that have something to gain from the research. They have an agenda behind the research, and they make sure that the outcome of the research is exactly what they need it to say. Are you starting to see why we have so many mistruths and lies and confusion in the nutrition world? And this is literally just the beginning. Here's what happened, though. In 2016, JAMA Internal Medicine, there was a study that was published in that. They exposed how the sugar industry influenced dietary guidelines by hiding research that showed that it was sugar's harmful effects on heart health, because this misdirection led to a whole generation and more of people fearing fat and consuming more sugar, which increased heart disease. So they hid the research, blamed it on fat. In 2016, JAMA released all the information and exposed how the sugar industry did this. But again, like I said earlier, what we've already been taught, that is hard. It's hard to relearn the things that we've already been taught. And these people know this. So we have literally multiple generations of people who we need to reprogram of what is actually healthy and what is not healthy. Our bodies actually require essential fatty acids and amino acids that come from fats and proteins. But did you know that there are no essential carbohydrates? None. Now you're going to find research and studies, if you Google this, that say, yes, there are essential carbohydrates. Again, though, look and see who funded that research. Because when you start to look at research and studies that have no agenda behind them, they're not funded by the food industry, they're not funded by people who have an agenda to sell something, that's when you start to get to the truth. So you have to have a critical mind when you're going through this information. There are no essential carbohydrates. I get so many questions. If you don't eat a lot of carbohydrates, how do you get your fiber? I don't get fiber. I really don't want fiber because fiber is actually not good for us. Fiber strips nutrients from our tissues and our bones, just like a lot of fruits and vegetables do as well, and beans and legumes and nuts and seeds. Now, that was in my other podcast on a myth, so check that out if you want to go further into that. But there are no essential carbohydrates. Our liver can make enough glucose for our red blood cells and the little bit that our brain needs. Our heart and our brain actually prefer to run on fat. It is a preferred fuel. It is considered actually a clean fuel. So if you think about it like your car, if you're going to put some alternative source of fuel in there, it's not going to run very long. It's going to get rusted probably from the inside out, right? If you put in good fuel, if you make sure that it's going to run fine, it's going to run clean, it's like what your engine needs, it's going to burn it. It won't just sit in there and rot from the inside out. That's exactly what happens with fats and proteins. Like our body needs it. But if we have too many carbs, there's decomposing on some level from the inside out, which causes aging, which causes type 2 diabetes, which causes obesity, which causes heart disease, which causes cancer, which causes autoimmune disorders, everything, all joint pain, any rheumatoid arthritis, Parkinson's. By focusing though on fats and proteins and healthy fats, right? Like your animal fats, like I was mentioning, we can support our overall health more effectively. Fats support metabolism by keeping your blood sugar levels low, which is the main culprit of heart disease and weight gain. Remember, the sugar industry hid that research. Sugar is the main culprit. So when we keep our blood sugar levels low, this is why you don't go have a juice in the morning. You don't have a smoothie bowl in the morning. You don't have a donut in the morning, a bowl of cereal in the morning. It's the main culprit of heart disease and weight gain. Okay, this is where we get to the ADA. This is the good stuff. So to really fully understand why low-fat diets were so heavily promoted, we really have to delve into some historical context. The American Dietetic Association, or the ADA, it's now known as the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, was founded in 1917 by a group of women that were involved, a part of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Now, this religious group has strong beliefs around diet, promoting vegetarianism and low-fat diets as part of their religious teachings to maintain sexual purity and overall health. I want you to really get that. The ADA was started by people, a part of a religious organization that had strong beliefs around. Most Seventh-day Adventists are vegetarian, some are vegan, and they promote a low-fat diet because they want to maintain sexual purity. A significant figure in this movement was John Harvey Kellogg. Kellogg cereal, Kellogg, there's a school. The founder of Kellogg cereal, I think it was his brother actually or something, but anyway, it's that family. Kellogg believed that diet could influence moral behavior, particularly sexual behavior. He promoted low-fat, high-fiber diets as a way to curb what he considered immoral behavior, like masturbation and sexual drive. Kellogg's belief was that reducing dietary fat could lower testosterone levels, because it does, making men more docile and less sexually active. This idea, though, was part of a broader agenda to shape societal behavior through diet. Kellogg once said that changing food habits could change the culture. Changing food habits could change the culture. So over the past 100 years, from 1917, this low-fat dietary approach has contributed to a significant decrease in men's testosterone levels, impacting society in various ways, from health to behavior. This historical context highlights how dietary recommendations can be influenced by cultural and religious beliefs. And that has nothing to do with scientific evidence. I want you to understand this. All of these guidelines that have been put in place since 1917 have either been from religious beliefs, political influences, money-making business, good business from big ag, from big food, big pharma, and it has nothing to do with actual scientific evidence. If we want to be healthy, we have to base our nutrition choices on actual truth, and that research that we can find the truth in, rather than outdated beliefs, rather than an agenda from the political, the food, the religion sectors trying to control behavior within people. So what does this all mean for you? It means that we need to really rethink our approach to diet. Instead of fearing fat, we need to focus on the quality of fats that we consume, embracing animal fats, butter, tallow, fatty fish, fatty meats, lard, and reducing the consumption of carbohydrates and sugars, especially refined carbohydrates and sugars, which has a more significant impact on heart disease and weight gain. Your average American eats around 300 grams of carbohydrates a day. 300. If you are overweight, if you struggle with mood disorders or any kind of mental issues, if you don't feel good in your body, if you have aches and pains, if you just don't feel good, if you're not ready to jump out of bed in the morning and really ready for your day and know that you're here to make an impact, I challenge you to change your food. I challenge you to get support in this, and I challenge you to make your life the best life that you can by challenging everything that you've thought around what is healthy and what is not healthy. It's about choosing the right types of foods that nourish your body, and it's about having the accurate information to help you in those decisions, not just marketing and propaganda. By choosing more fat and less refined carbs, you are going to be able to manage your weight better, your mood's better, and just feel better overall. So thank you so much for tuning in to this episode. There was a lot here. I hope that you were able to digest it all. Listen to this a few times, take some notes, share this with your friends. The more we get this information out there, the more we're going to be able to change the landscape of our world. So let's start with ourselves first. And then when we change ourselves, we start to have that ripple effect throughout our family and our friends. And then all of a sudden they start to shift and they start to take a look at us and they start to doing and asking questions. And then all of a sudden it's this butterfly, this ripple effect that ripples out into the entire world. But it has to start with you. So the question that you can ask yourself with this is, what do I want to do with this information? Second thing, am I struggling with any of this information? And if you are, that's totally okay. It's normal. You've been taught this your whole life. To change our beliefs around something that has been so ingrained in us for years and years and years is the hardest thing to do. But it's necessary if we're going to grow, and it's necessary if you want true optimal health. And the third thing that you can do is reach out to me and get support. I have a free group on Facebook. that I can link in the show notes. I have a group coming up on August 5th that's going to literally bring you into the pillars of how you can fix your metabolism and regulate your hormones so that you can start to lose weight and you can learn these things. So get support, because you can be healthy. No matter how old you are, you can turn your health around. I don't care how old you are. You can be 80 years old. I don't care. You can turn your health around. I know you can, because I've seen it happen. So I hope that I've shed some light on the myth of low-fat diets and why they might not be the best choice for heart health and weight loss. Please reach out if you want to learn more, and don't forget to subscribe and leave a review if you enjoyed this episode. So until next time, take care of your health, and remember, not all fats are bad. See you next time.